In a busy warehouse on the outskirts of town, David works tirelessly to make ends meet and care for his ailing mother. One rainy Tuesday morning, after 10 years of low wages, a cry of pain is heard from the loading dock. An elderly customer has fallen, and company policy prohibits workers from leaving their posts. Nevertheless, David helps the woman, and in a few precious minutes loses the job his family depends on. As he walks home in the rain, he has no idea that 3 pairs of eyes are watching his sacrifice. 24 hours later, the roar of a private jet changes his life forever. Hello everyone, welcome to Stories to Heal. Today I am happy to share a new story with you. David lives in a small apartment with his mother, who requires regular medical care. Their life is simple. Even the walls of the apartment are almost empty of decorations, but the love they have for each other makes the house full of warmth. Every day, David gets up very early at exactly 4 o'clock to prepare a simple breakfast for his mother before she goes to work. Although he is tired, he always makes sure that his mother receives attention and nutritious food. David works in a large warehouse as a loading dock worker. His job was far from luxurious or comfortable, but his income was enough to cover their basic needs, including paying monthly bills and buying medicine for his mother. For 10 hours a day, David lifted and moved heavy boxes nonstop. His co-workers often rushed to finish their work, focusing only on meeting quota goals with little regard for safety or the work environment. On a wet day due to heavy rain since morning, the loading dock at the warehouse became slippery and dangerous. David, always alert, noticed an old woman walking slowly toward the customer pickup area. The woman looked frail, her body slightly bent. She held a small receipt in her hand, which swayed in the strong wind. There was a feeling of unease in David's heart as he saw the woman's hesitant steps. "Ma'am, be careful," David shouted, trying to warn her from a distance, but his voice seemed to be swallowed by the roar of the wind, which was blowing harder and harder. Then the incident David had feared happened. The old woman's foot slipped on the slippery concrete surface due to puddles of rainwater. Her body fell heavily to the ground, and David heard a scream of pain echo through the bustle of the warehouse. David's heart pounded as if he could feel the pain the woman was in. He quickly ran toward the old woman to help her. The company's rule book was very clear. Every worker must remain at his post during working hours without exception. This rule was strictly enforced. One mistake, the consequence is dismissal. He already knew all this, but the situation before him tested the limits of his principles. The sound of a woman's moaning became clearer, but David's colleagues chose to ignore it, pretending not to hear. They were busy with their own work, ignoring what was happening. The image of his mother's face appeared in David's mind. He couldn't stop thinking. What if it was his mother lying there, alone in the rain? What if no one cared for her? Without thinking about the risks, David immediately took a step. He ran toward the sound, ignoring the looks of his colleagues as they began to realize what he had done. When he arrived, he found an old woman lying on the street, her body soaked from the heavy rain. Quickly, David removed his work jacket and used it to shield the woman from the falling water. He crouched down beside her and tried to assess her condition. "Don't move yet, ma'am," he said in a sympathetic voice. "I'm David. Are you badly hurt?" The woman nodded slowly, her face pale and her hands trembling with cold. David reached into his pocket and immediately called for an ambulance. While he waited, he stayed by her side, trying to comfort her with soft words. But out of the corner of his eye, David saw a shadow approaching. It was his supervisor, Mr. Peterson, walking quickly with a flushed face. His gaze was full of anger, and his steps showed impatience. "David, get back to your post right now," Mr. Peterson shouted loudly, his tone leaving no room for discussion. David raised his face and looked hesitantly at his supervisor. However, he did not move from his position. "Sir, she's hurt." "I can't leave her," David replied, his voice soft but firm. Mr. Peterson sighed heavily, clearly annoyed by the defiance. "This is your last warning, David. If you don't get back here right now, you're fired. David looked at the old woman. Her face reminded him of his mother. He knew that the decision he was about to make could change his life forever. But what was the point of working if it meant sacrificing humanity? I'm sorry, sir, David said. I can't leave her. I have to make sure she's safe. Mr. Peterson stood there, staring at David with eyes that glowed with anger. After what seemed like an eternity, he said coldly, "You're fired, David. When the ambulance comes, clean out your locker and get out." David simply nodded, not regretting his decision in the least. The rain continued to pour, but under her jacket, the old woman began to feel a little warmer. For David, it was proof that he had made the right choice, even if the consequences were severe. After the ambulance took the woman away, David walked home in the rain, holding the box of his belongings, which felt light compared to the weight on his heart. He was worried about how he would pay his mother's mounting medical bills. Every step he took felt slow, as if the world was spinning faster than he was. Unbeknownst to him, 3 figures in a black car parked on the side of the road were watching his every move. The next morning, as the cool morning air began to envelop the city, David's phone suddenly rang. A woman's voice, soft yet powerful, introduced herself as Margaret Wells of Wells Industries, a large corporation David had never imagined. Her voice piqued David's curiosity, and she asked him to come to a meeting in the airport's private terminal. David felt confused and anxious, not knowing what was really happening. But curiosity drove him to follow the order. A short time later, a black car came to pick him up. Without much thought, David got into the car. His mind was still filled with questions, but a feeling of fear and confusion began to envelop his heart. When he arrived at the airport, David was shocked. There he saw 3 private jets elegantly parked, a sight far removed from the life he usually led. In the crowd of people who seemed to be busy, David saw a very familiar face. One of the women standing there was an elderly client he had helped some time ago. It turned out that the woman was not just anyone, but Catherine Wells, CEO of Wells Industries. How surprised David was to learn that the woman he had always thought of as an ordinary person was actually a very influential figure with great power in the business world. Catherine sincerely expressed that she and her 2 sons were very impressed with David's courage and kindness. They appreciated David's dedication and sincerity in selflessly helping others. Seeing these qualities, they decided to give David the opportunity to lead a new division that would focus on community empowerment. "Not many people are willing to help selflessly like you, David," said Catherine, praising David's noble attitude. David felt very touched and trembled a little as he signed the contract that was presented to him. Although his hands were trembling with emotion and anxiety, he felt very grateful. The salary offered was enough to meet all the needs of his mother, who had always been the main priority in his life. In addition, they even offered his mother a flexible work schedule in the employee assistance department so that she could work comfortably without sacrificing time with her family. It was a priceless opportunity, and David knew it was the beginning of a new chapter in his life. 3 months had passed since that life-changing event, and David was confidently leading the team he had built. The program he was leading was now helping hundreds of families, giving them new hope and a better life. Every morning as he went about his day, his mind would return to that rainy day when a seemingly simple yet profound act of kindness unexpectedly changed the course of his life. Catherine had once wisely told him, "Remember when you asked why we chose you? Look around. This is why." Those words were clearer to him now. David now fully understood that acts of kindness, though seemingly small and unseen by most, have the power to change the world one small step at a time. Like this story? Click like and subscribe for more, and share your thoughts with a single word in the comment section.